To cross across the studio now to Solange Moujon with the press review. And Solange, you're starting with that new prime minister named in Tunisia.
Yeah, there is a woman in the Kasbah. That is the headline of the Tunisian paper La Presse today, as it covers the Tunisian president's appointment of Najla Bouden as his prime minister, something he called a historic moment, as she is the first ever prime minister in the Arab world. But La Presse does not hail this appointment as necessarily a great choice. Rather, it holds out on the verdict, as does the pan-Arabic paper Al-Quds. Both of these papers wonder whether Miss Bouden, who is relatively a political novice, is the right choice to face the economic and political crisis that is hitting Tunisia. Now, for Tunisie Numérique, the president was fully aware of the fact that many were hoping for a finance-savvy prime minister, but in the end, for his fourth prime minister, it's important to note, since 2019, he goes through them quite quickly, President Kais Saied picked someone that may be, as other papers note, more docile, leading some to feel that what's really going on here is a sort of savvy presidential power grab.
And moving on now to a sort of meta argument here in France, the press is talking about whether or not it should be talking about Eric Zemmour.
Yeah, and before we dive into this debate about Zemmour and how he may be shaping the French politics, at least on the right at the moment, let's do a quick recap of who he is. As the Financial Times explains, he is an anti-Islam TV personality. He's been convicted twice of inciting racism. He was recently come out saying that French people should be obliged to give French names to their children, like Jacques instead of Mohammed, a polemicist. He is also a top-selling author. And politicians, including Emmanuel Macron, have generally tried to sort of ignore his presence. But as L'Opinion tells us, that's becoming increasingly difficult. Zemmour's ratings in a recent poll showed that he's pulling 13% of the vote and taking votes from far-right potential candidates like Marine Le Pen and Les Républicains Xavier Bertrand. Now, the paper says that this quickly shifting political fight could actually be a benefit to Emmanuel Macron, as it divides the right, and the president would have more potentially leg room as a less controversial candidate. But is all of this a lot of hot air stirred up by the media, a sort of repeat potentially of Trump's cable news phenomenon? Well, that may be what Chapat is referring to in his cartoon for Le Canard Enchaîné, where he has Zemmour on campaign saying he's tired of his fans chanting his name, to which his aide says, those aren't groupies, they're journalists. So journalism jab aside, though, debate is raging in France over what to do and how to cover Zemmour in politics and in the press.
Moving on again, Solange, now for some U.S. politics. How is the U.S. press covering what has been, so far at least, a difficult week for Joe Biden?
Well, Congress is now moving to avert the shutdown, which could potentially be one less fire for Joe Biden to put out. But that doesn't mean, as Politico tells us, that Joe Biden isn't hurting. As the site tells us, his poll numbers are dropping, with many Democrats counting on the president to get major legislation passed. But that is proving increasingly difficult to do because of divisions within his own party. Now, why is pushing his stalled infrastructure bill so hard to push it back past the finish line? Well, it's because it's being blocked by both progressives who feel betrayed that things were taken out of the bill, but also by a couple of right-leaning Democrats, to which the Post says, respectively to each, quote, stop acting like children and stop stalling. In the opinion piece, the Post pleads with Democrats to not blow it, for Democratic voters are counting on major legislative changes. And if Biden, with his dipping poll numbers, he doesn't pull through, well, that could seriously hurt his, not only what he wants to get through, but also the Democrats in the upcoming midterm elections.
And Solange, now for some disheartening environmental news also out of the U.S.
Yeah, goodbye ivory-billed woodpecker, goodbye several types of freshwater mussels. The New York Times tells us that U.S. conservation officials have just released a report that says over 20 animals and a plant have been added to a list of extinct species. They are gone. And the paper notes that the Endangered Species Act has come too late for them. It is, the paper says, a sign potentially of a glimpse of what the future future holds because of climate change and because of human activities.
And Solange, finally from you, you found an article about a night gone wrong.
Yeah, I'm just going to read you the headline because I think it sums it up the best. This is the story about a missing drunk man who spent hours helping a search party look for himself. A Turkish man, Beyhan Mutlu, was drinking with friends until he wandered into a forest. Worried about him, his pals called authorities and set up a search and rescue mission, which went on for hours until he suddenly heard his name being called and wondered, hey guys, I'm here. Who are you looking for? Now, Vice tells us this has happened before. In 2012, an Asian tourist in Iceland got lost. She was spotted among the volunteers, and she said when she was recognized that she hadn't recognized her own description of herself, and that's why she was helping out to look for herself.
At least it looks like she used volunteers, whereas it sounds like the other guy called public officials.
Both searches had search and rescue real professionals and volunteers calling out their names. So a no-go on either of them.
Expensive night gone wrong. Thank you, Solange.